What if I told you there was only one correct aspect ratio? I'm gonna tell you, and not like oh, it changes for every circumstance. There is one, and only one, and I'm going to tell you. Hi everybody, Nick here, and if you're new to this channel, welcome. I'm in the middle of making a feature film independently, and this channel is basically my diary of the entire process from tip to tail. And I basically make these videos as kind of like lessons to myself, or things I'm exploring, or ways to think about things, because once you have to organize your thoughts to tell it to somebody else, you end up understanding it a lot better. So there's something I've been thinking about a lot recently, and that is aspect ratio. Especially with the popularity of budget anamorphic lenses like the inexpensive Sure or Laowa, or the different options that are out there, you know, sort of sub $1,000 lenses. There's been a lot of interest in, oh, well, anamorphic is great because then you get this wider aspect ratio. And then people are like, well, you know, you can just shoot spherical and crop in and you get the same thing. And anyway, there's a whole lot more to why anamorphics are desirable or not for a project than aspect ratio, but that's an element of why people talk about them. And it's true that a lot of films that mean something to people may be in an aspect ratio that's different from what you're familiar with. So, you know, if you're like me, a child of Star Wars and early science fiction films, you've seen a lot of movies in 2.39 or 2.4 to 1 aspect ratio. And there's so much discussion about what that means and how that communicates this wider field of view and the grandiosity to you. Or you might have heard Zack Snyder recently talking about his 4:3 cut of Justice League, which he describes as being ideal for superhero movies because then they're more vertical, as superheroes are these tall, imposing figures, and the vertical biased aspect ratio compared to regular is better for communicating that idea. And I disagree with all of those things. I feel like there is one correct aspect ratio, and it is 16:9. And I will die on this hill and I'll tell you why I think so. And if you disagree with me, that is okay. We're all, you know, essentially pursuing something creative and artistic, and it's okay for you to disagree with me. But here is why I feel like 16:9 is the only correct aspect ratio. Number one, it closely matches the field of view of our own eyes. You'll read different things, and biology is different, and different people are able to perceive things differently, but we perceive in a ratio that is a little bit wider than it is tall to some extent. 16:9 is basically 1.78 aspect ratio, 1.78 wide for every 1 unit tall, and that's somewhere in the department of how we see. You'll see some places say we see something like 4:3, or we see more like 5:4, or you'll see something saying that we see actually pretty close to 16:9. It depends. But the point is, we definitely don't see as wide as CinemaScope, 2.39 to 1, and I don't really think that we see in 4:3. Here's a good test for you. Turn on your television and get very, very close to it until either the top and bottom or the two sides seem to disappear into your periphery. And my contention is the top and bottom and the sides sort of disappear at close to the same moment, meaning that your vision is somewhere in 16:9. Okay, so why should we make content that matches our field of view? The idea, for me anyway, is that when you're sitting in a theater, you choose the seat that is sort of the comfortable distance for you. THX actually has certifications for this. For a cinema to be THX certified, it has to be able to hit a certain degree of field of view from the center of the theater. It's something like 30 degrees or something field of view from the center of the theater, and there's certain limits, right? But generally, you know, I like sitting middle or slightly closer than middle. Some people prefer a little farther back than middle, or right at middle or something. I like to be a little bit close. I like a pretty good field of view. And I like that field of view to be mostly full. Obviously not so full that I have to turn my head. That's not something that I'm interested in. Incidentally, I recently went to the Sphere in Las Vegas, and you have to turn your head for that. And so that's a whole different conversation. That is a different art form, a different presentation, and that's totally okay. But for general consumption of film content, I like to have a generally pretty wide field of view and not have to turn too much to see, obviously you move your eyes around, but I don't want to have to turn my head all the time. So at home, I have a 77-inch TV and I sit like 8 or 9 feet from it, pretty close. So it actually replicates that theater experience pretty closely. Now, the second reason, it matches our field of vision. Number 2, our devices are 16:9. Now, this was kind of developed as a way to compromise the delivery formats of the era. The industry was transitioning from 4:3 cathode ray tube televisions to something new with digital delivery, and they were kind of trying to split the difference between 4:3 television delivery and the 2.39 cinema aspect ratio that was very popular at the time. And so they settled on 16:9. I think there are also some manufacturing reasons there. They can maximize the number of panels that they manufacture at a given moment, or they could at the time. So 16:9 became the standard. Interestingly, Back to the Future Part 2, when they look 30 years into the future, you see a 16:9 television on the wall, even though they weren't in production yet. So that was pretty cool. But we have all these devices that are at 16:9. Our televisions, our computer screens, our laptops. Our phones are generally a little bit wider than that. They're closer to 2:1 or even a little bit wider than that. But that's okay. It's not terribly far away. They're definitely not like 239 wide. But all of these devices are that way. And we love to consume on these devices. I love watching movies in my home. Like I said, I have a big screen set up. I've got great sound. I've got seats that rumble. You should definitely get something like that if you can. They're not super expensive. I can't remember what they're called. I don't know. Some kind of rumbling seats. They basically just put a small subwoofer underneath every chair in the couch. And so it feels very much like a really good theater experience, except I can pause, I can go to the bathroom, I can go get something to eat if I want, whatever. I love consuming films at home. I think it's fantastic. And we've got now, 4K HDR delivery. I've got a calibrated TV. It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. But when I'm watching films these days, a lot of them now used mixed format delivery. So they'll show you, for example, 239 for certain scenes that were filmed a certain way, and then the IMAX scenes, they show you the full aspect ratio that they captured. I wonder in some cases if this is 100% BS or only 50% BS, because most of these films are capturing on cameras that had a different aspect ratio, and they're just choosing what to deliver at different times. Okay, well, this scene was filmed on IMAX. Okay, well, this scene was filmed on Arri Alexa with a spherical, so you got a 3:2 image out of it. Don't tell me you didn't shoot RAW. You could give me a 16:9 deliverable if you wanted to, but you don't. Anyway, my point is, when they switch from the 239 to the 16:9, I like it. I like seeing more. I like my field of view being filled a little bit more and not looking at a bunch of black pixels just wasting space on my television. And then when they go back from the IMAX scenes to their 239, I'm like, I feel so cheated. It is lame. Similarly, when I watch Justice League in 4:3, the Snyder Cut was fun. It was wonderful. It was a great film. I adore Henry Cavill as Superman. I hate looking at black bars, okay? And that whole it's vertical, you're gonna look up and down. No, you're not. Not unless you buy a larger television or you sit closer to it or you do something like that. You're just wasting space. So for me, 16:9 is the end-all be-all of motion picture content delivery. Hooray! I will accept minor deviations, 2:1 Univisium, great. 17:9, which is what the sensor in this red VistaVision V-Raptor X is. That's cool. Although most of the time I either just film in 16:9 mode or I crop in to 16:9 anyway. You know, I will accept different formats for different content delivery, but for motion picture consumption, in my opinion, 16:9 is the end of the day. And I have actually some more really interesting things to say on how you can film with that idea in mind, particularly with Super 35 anamorphic lenses, or Super 35 lenses in general, but particularly Super 35 anamorphic lenses. Super 35 2x1 anamorphic. So I'm looking at you, Atlas Orion, DZO, Pavo. There's a number of examples, a bunch of anamorphics from the past. If you have 16:9 in mind, then you can film with the full frame sensor height of this camera, because it's a 21mm tall sensor, and you can film 21:21 de-squeeze to a 2x1, and you get almost no vignetting and almost perfect field illumination, even when you're almost wide open. If you're a nerd like me and you're into this stuff, check the CVP lens database and check what you can do in 2x1 mode with Atlas Orions. You'll see that even just at T4, field illumination is perfect. There's no vignetting. You're getting basically the exact middle piece of the lens, but almost corner to corner before it starts a vignette. I'm super excited about this. Next time I am able to get my greedy little hands on some Atlas Orions, I'll show you more about that. More on that to come, but at the end of the day, that is my argument. I think 16:9 is the only aspect ratio for motion picture consumption, and you can 100% disagree with me or hate me or say it totally depends on the film you're watching or you're ridiculous or anything you like, and that is okay. I'm just one crazy person with one crazy opinion. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.